Got everybody. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for being here today. I'm Kevin Guthrie. I'm the Director of the Florida Division of Emergency Management. As State Coordinating Officer, I have asked these agencies to participate in the first ever agency head briefing as it relates to a disaster. This presser will be limited to Hurricane Ian information only. If you have any questions about any other issue outside of Hurricane Ian, you will need to get with the state agency that is represented here, their comms team. We're here in the SCOC coordinating and collaborating on a day-to-day basis to ensure that impacted residents and businesses have the resources they need to begin their recovery and rebuild. I want to thank these agency leaders, including the ones that are not here and currently in the field addressing community needs. More than 3,700 resource requests from our impacted local partners and have been received, and more than 3,100 are in process or completed. We have opened 2 new fuel depots in Sarasota and Hardee counties for a total of 8 fuel depots. These locations throughout Central and Southwest Florida ensure that first responders have the fuel they need to respond to the incident. We have nearly 1.5 million gallons of fuel on hand, and we have dispensed more than 180,000 gallons of fuel to date. I want to thank the men and women of the 43,000 linemen that are out in the field who have restored more than 2 million residents with power. We still have nearly 621,000 that remain without power, and rest assured they are working hard to get those lights back on. For those that can receive power, for example, they have lines to their home and the infrastructure is still standing. For those that can receive power, the estimates are from all of our electrical outlets that they will have restoration done by Sunday of this week. That is a goal that they are trying to hit, to have all customers that can receive power by Sunday of this week. This does not include those areas catastrophically hit where there is absolutely no infrastructure, no homes, and so on. To support our residents in need, we have distributed 829,000 MREs, 3.8 million bottles of water at points of distributions throughout Southwest Florida. As of today, there are approximately 34 active points of distribution, 8 in Lee, 2 in Charlotte, 5 in Sarasota, 1 in Hardee, 3 in DeSoto, 3 in Highlands. 4 more pods are mobilizing currently in Collier County and will open soon. I want to thank the Florida National Guard, Major General Eifert, for all the support with all the pods. That is a mission that has been tasked to the Florida National Guard for probably decades. They have done a phenomenal job, including their support on airlift, security, and a host of other missions. Recovery. Prior to Hurricane Ian's landfall, FDEM positioned 5 teams along the projected path of the storm to immediately begin conducting rapid damage assessment after the hurricane. We are continuing to conduct those rapid damage assessments and are in the process of submitting 32 requests for FEMA public assistance across our counties. At this point in time, 17 counties have been declared for Category A debris removal assistance, Category B emergency protective measures, and Category B is actually for all 67 counties, and then additionally 17 counties have been declared for individual assistance. We are working diligently to get Highlands County and Lake County added to that declaration, and we continue to have conversations with the Federal Emergency Management Agency regarding Monroe County. Utilizing the advanced pre-staging and deployment of staged recovery teams, we have secured 100% Category A debris removal, 100% Category B emergency protective measure for 30 days. Because of this, Florida has paved the way for municipalities to expedite debris removal across the state. More than 119,000 individuals have applied for FEMA, and I'm actually going to correct that. I just got a new number coming in the door as we came in. It's actually 164,000 individuals have applied for FEMA individual assistance. We are working closely with counties to establish the mobile registration intake centers and the disaster recovery centers. I want to go over just a few safety tips as reminders. Do not disaster sightsee. Anybody that is just coming into an area to see the damage needs to leave the area so that first responders can do their job. Do not fly drones where responders are at. Helicopters will have to cease operations until we identify where the drone is being operated from and take that drone out of service. Generator safety. We continue to have a number of individuals, over 600,000, that are without power. Do not operate a generator inside of a garage. Do not operate a generator outside of a cracked window. Make sure that it is elevated outside of water, and that will help us prevent further injuries. When it comes to individuals that are coming to your home, remember, volunteer organizations are free. They will not charge you. Again, let me say that. Volunteer organizations are free. They will not charge you. As Jimmy Petronas has said time and time again, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. Be careful what you may sign. As you continue to clean up, handle the cleanup process, please use safety gear, including goggles, hats, gloves, to keep yourself safe. We will now have a short brief from each of the individuals that are represented here, and I will start with Secretary Dane Eagle. Secretary.
Good morning, everybody. Dane Eagle, Secretary, Department of Economic Opportunity. Our main duty at DEO is to coordinate with the private sector before, during, and after the storm, and also focus on economic recovery. We have been stationed here at the Emergency Operations Center days before the storm, leading up to it, doing daily calls with the public and the business sector, 1:30 p.m. daily. We have many businesses, box stores located here, Publix, Walmart, Lowe's, and what we do with that coordination is announce to the public about supply shortages, potential supply shortages, where they might be able to find goods, and also closures. And the good news is a lot of those stores are up and running 24 hours after the storm. So that's great news, and we've been happy to coordinate on that. I want to leave two things behind with you and the public today, and hopefully you can help us get this message out. Number one, we have activated disaster unemployment assistance, and thanks to the governor's leadership, we've also cut red tape in allowing Floridians access to disaster unemployment assistance. We have, through executive order, the governor's executive order, waived the waiting week, waived work search requirements, and waived employee Florida registration. There's no need for red tape in a time like this. I know people personally back home who don't even have a job to go to. The restaurant on the beach is completely gone. And so this is a great opportunity for them to tap into resources made available by the state in coordination with the federal government for disaster unemployment assistance. One thing that the public needs to know is you must apply for traditional reemployment assistance to be eligible for DUA. DUA is designed to fill the gaps where RA doesn't, so you must apply for RA, be denied, and that denial is your pass to then apply for DUA. And DUA is available 26, 27 weeks from the day of the storm to help people get back on their feet and bridge that gap so they can find gainful employment. The other thing I want to leave behind today is that we are continuing to ask businesses to do the disaster assessment survey. This allows us to get data from businesses across the state. We realize Southwest Florida is ground zero, but we've been inland, we've been to East Florida, we've been to Central Florida, you name it. There are counties that are affected that we want to make sure that we are there helping, and we will be, and we are. But the data that you can provide about how your business has been affected, whether that's structural damage and or economic damage, we want to know. So both DUA and the Business Damage Assessment Survey can be found at floridadisaster.biz. That's floridadisaster.biz. The survey takes just a few minutes to fill out, and that will allow us to tap into additional resources so that we can assist you. I want to thank the governor for his swift leadership and making sure that we are activated, that we are on it. I have a lot of faith for my friends and family and people back home in Southwest Florida and across the state because of the leadership that I've seen here and making sure that boots are on the ground, and we will be on the ground in the coming days, weeks, even months to make sure that people have the resources they need. So thank you, Kevin. Thank you to the team here, and thank you to the governor.
Good morning. I'm Lieutenant Colonel Heidelberg on behalf of Major General Eifert, who's out in the field surveying the damage and working with the soldiers today. First and foremost, I want to thank Director Guthrie and the governor for the whole of government response that we've seen here today. It truly is a team effort, and the National Guard's just an honor to be a part of it. We currently have about 5,200 of your fellow citizens, our soldiers and airmen, mobilized in the impact area, supporting over 11 counties. Obviously, we're in the coastal areas and in the inland flooding where we're focusing efforts, but today our major focus is the barrier islands. As we've transitioned from the search and rescue missions, we're able to put forces in on those barrier islands. So you'll see engineer equipment, soldiers and airmen and support elements moving into those barrier islands to set up security, work with law enforcement to ensure that we're not only taking care of those citizens, but that we're securing that area. And we'll continue to focus our efforts on the inland flooding. As that continues, those rivers continue to peak. We're prepared to transition it and support those as well. We've got 34 pods, as they mentioned this morning, that we're supporting in those counties. We've got aircraft. We've done over 12,000 hours of flights. We've got over 1,400 rescues that we've supported. But really what the focus is, it's a whole of government effort, and the Florida National Guard's here. We'll continue to be here, and I'm looking forward to answering any of your specific questions you have. I'll be followed by the Secretary of Health.
Good morning, everyone. Dr. Ken Sheppy, the Deputy Secretary for Health at the Department of Health. Department of Health and Agency for Healthcare Administration medical teams have been working tirelessly to respond to Hurricane Ian and are honored to serve Floridians in this time of need. We have facilitated the evacuation of over 150 healthcare facilities and over 7,000 patients through both air and ground resources. We continue to work to ensure facilities are regaining operations, and 22 so far have returned to full operations. After 600 healthcare facilities lost power, the state has supported measures to return 412 of those to get back up and running. That's roughly 65% so far. For moms and babies, the Department of Health's Healthy Start coalitions are supporting moms, children, and families by distributing pack-and-plays, diapers, wipes, and formula to shelters. State health partners continue to monitor the needs of the surrounding communities, and we ask if you are an individual in an impacted area who has non-emergent healthcare needs. We continue to do these assessments around the state of Florida. We ask that you contact your local county health department for any unmet needs so that we may help you with those. As Hurricane Ian approached, the department operated 58 special needs shelters to support the 4,800 medically vulnerable patients, clients, and their staff. And there are also unique strategies being operated at the county level, such as in Seminole County, where community partners opened a shelter for children with enhanced medical needs, including those on ventilators, serving over 80 registered pediatric clients. The shelters are slowly starting to reduce the number of clients served as individuals either return to their residences or transition to long-term housing. And as of this morning, there are 7 special needs shelters still open with a population of over 600. More than 450 ground emergency service and 8 air ambulance assets have been used to support patient transport, local EMS, and enhance local 911 services and operations in the impacted area. And Alachua and Pasco County Health Departments are assisting with providing oxygen to impacted areas. Our State Surgeon General, Dr. Ladapo, has issued a number of emergency orders to ensure the resources that Floridians need are readily available, including the allowance for out-of-state physicians, nurses of all levels, physician assistants, and EMS professionals to work in our state. We're also expediting processing of new applications in our state for those same professionals, as well as expediting mental health professionals licensing. We're also expanding emergency access to primary care via telehealth across our state for the impacted areas. And the Department of Health's Office of Children Medical Services provided expedited translation services in Spanish and Haitian Creole on topics such as carbon monoxide safety and boil water notices to reduce the impacts of the storm on the healthcare needs of our families. We have received a number of calls from volunteers, health practitioner volunteers looking how to volunteer. And I will point out that we can go to, if they are interested in volunteering in the impacted areas, they can go to volunteerflorida.org. In conclusion, I'd like to specifically thank all of our first responders, healthcare practitioners who've worked tirelessly over this past week to facilitate all of these achievements and to help Floridians continue to have good health and recover from this storm. We continue to serve around the clock alongside our partners across all sectors. And I want to specifically thank the Governor and First Lady for their leadership and dedication to our state. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm FDLE Commissioner Mark Glass, and I know it's been a really tough week across the state of Florida, but I'm so proud of all our law enforcement officers and criminal justice professionals and our medical examiners that are working tirelessly to support this state. I also want to thank the Governor and the First Lady for their superb leadership in making sure that we have all the assets needed, and we as a criminal justice community couldn't do what we're doing without the help of Division of Emergency Management under Kevin's leadership to make sure all these things happen. More than 1,400 state and local law enforcement officers from 66 agencies have been deployed to post-Hurricane Ian. Right now, FDLE's mutual aid team is coordinating over 214 law enforcement missions, matching resources with the hardest hit areas. And we are also supporting federal partners, including the Coast Guard, in these life-saving missions that we're doing. Current missions include search and rescue, recovery, power, and infrastructure restoration and security. FDLE's 3 large first responder base camps we have now are in Lee and Charlotte counties, and handling hundreds of first deployed responders as they come in and go out, check in and check out of the area. These base camps include meal services, sleeping quarters, showers, and laundry facilities. And let me begin by saying again, we could not do any of that without this man here and his team providing all that support for us. So thank you, Kevin, appreciate it. Finally, our FDLE agents and analysts and logistic teams from all of the corners of the state and Capitol Police are currently deployed. And our Fort Myers forensics office is helping the medical examiners with doing identifications. So if you have any questions after this, I'm here for you. And thank you again.
Commissioner Manny Diaz, Department of Education. At the height of the storm, we had 59 school districts that were closed for at least one day, bracing for Hurricane Ian's impact or serving as shelters. And now 46 of those districts are back in school as of today. Throughout the state, coordinating reopening efforts, and I have to tell you how proud I am of our state's response. Again, I want to be thankful to Governor DeSantis's leadership, and also Kevin, your leadership in providing assets as these schools try to open up, as these districts try to get back up and running. Something as simple as payroll becomes very difficult as they have teachers that are all over the place displaced, and having these generators and other assets put in there to make sure they can continue providing for those teachers. In addition to our dedicated superintendents, administrators, and school staff and custodians, there have been hundreds of linemen, first responders, and transportation experts who have helped these school reopenings a reality. All weekend I spent time in Southwest Florida, from Lee County, Collier, DeSoto, Hardy. They're all at different stages and dealing with different issues, from continuing to run shelters to transitioning out of shelters to doing assessment of the properties, making sure power is back on, and communicating the needs that they will have in order to get these schools reopened. School districts across the state are also coming together. I'm very proud of our superintendents. We have superintendents that are not affected or minimally affected already providing resources. For example, we had some of them come into Lee County with cafeteria staff to help with the distribution of food over the weekend. We had facility experts come from Miami-Dade going over to DeSoto, and also to have experts going over to Lee to help who have experience in some of this crisis management, going back to when we had to put schools at the Gitmo base in Cuba during one of the Cuban migration crisis. So all of that's being provided. I'm proud of all our superintendents supporting each other. And again, I want to be thankful to the governor and the First Lady and Kevin and your staff. Thank you for everything you've been doing.
Good morning. I'm Colonel Gene Spaulding, Director of the Florida Highway Patrol, and I echo everyone's sentiment thanking Governor DeSantis, First Lady, for their excellent leadership during this crisis. Thanks Kevin and his team, the collaboration from everyone in the room, and thank Executive Director Terry Rose, my boss who runs Department of Highway Safety Motor Vehicles, for her unwavering support and leadership as well. I want to assure everyone that your state troopers are out on the road working for you today. Initially, when the first indications of the storm making landfall, we were out in advance, working with Department of Transportation Secretary Jared Perdue closely with evacuations, implementing the emergency shoulder use plan, and making sure that those in the harm's way were able to be evacuated. Immediately following landfall, as soon as our troopers were available, they were hitting the roads, chainsaw crews, bringing tarps to residents and community, clearing roadways to try to get our emergency responders in. And they've also been providing escorts for utility vehicles, ambulances, fuel trucks, and other critical resources that are needed for these impacted areas. We have canceled all days off for the majority of the state. That's 1,700 troopers that are available. We have actually deployed 200 of our quick response force team members from around the state to the impacted areas. We have 2 primary base camps, one in Punta Gorda and one in Hardy County. We're also working closely in DeSoto County. Working with the communities, we're providing unmanned aerial vehicle assistance for search and rescue, helping DOT with bridge inspections with those assets, and doing a various number of other things. We've also deployed our mobile disaster relief kitchen to Hardy County Command Post. To date, we've fed over 1,000 meals to first responders with our team working down there. We also, under Executive Director Rhodes' leadership, have deployed our Flowmobiles, that's our Florida Licensing on Wheels vehicles, to the Hertz Arena in Fort Myers. They will be there at 1 o'clock today, providing driver's license replacements, vehicle tag replacements, and they can make copies of titles, but they can't do any title work right now. But they will be deployed as of about 1 o'clock this afternoon, and they'll be working 8 to 6 daily, 7 days a week, for those that have been displaced or in need of driver's license, ID credentials, or anything dealing with motor vehicle registrations. There again, we continue to work with DOT Secretary Perdue on travel. That is our biggest issue right now as far as reentry and checking roadways. We still have several roadways that are underwater. Keep in mind that just because the water recedes don't necessarily mean the roadway is safe to travel on. There is a high likelihood of washouts under the asphalt, under the roadways, so please don't try to drive around barricades. It's been mentioned already. If you don't need to be on the roadways, don't be on the roadways. Leave it available for first responders to be able to respond. And finally, we encourage you to, if you see any stranded motorists or any hazards on our roadways, to please contact STAR FHP. That's star 347. That's the toll-free call to our comm centers. Obviously, if it's an immediate emergency, call 911, but I will be available for questions also. Again, thanks, Kevin, for putting this together, and thank everyone in the room for their collaboration.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Josie Tamayo. I'm the CEO of Volunteer Florida, and I must say it's an honor and a privilege to be here and speak with you all today and to tell you and give you an update on what we're doing in Volunteer Florida. First and foremost, I want to thank Governor DeSantis and First Lady Casey DeSantis for their incredible leadership throughout this emergency, and for all that are doing great response efforts throughout behind me and even in and outside of this room. I'm grateful here for all of you and bringing attention to ongoing need and aid for our state. Since Hurricane Ian hit, amazing volunteers have subsequently joined our response and recovery efforts through various partner organizations that we work with. Save the Children, the Salvation Army, American Red Cross, Team Rubicon, Catholic Charities, Feeding Florida, Midwest Food Bank, Tool Bank, Operation Barbecue Relief, just to mention a few that we announced the other day. These organizations have been on the ground sharing food, tools, kits, comfort kits, all series of things, and I'm getting calls constantly about baby food and things from all our partners, from Publix to Walmart. And as early as this morning, we received a call of additional funds coming from Comcast to our disaster fund. So I want to thank specifically the First Lady. She has been amazing in leading efforts to fund the Florida Disaster Fund. She has passionately advocated for these relief funds and has helped to secure over $21 million in the first 48 hours since the fund was activated, which is an unbelievable amount of money that will go to great need, not only for response, but as you can imagine, we've all seen the photos, for recovery efforts as well. So Volunteer Florida has already distributed $1 million from the Florida Disaster Fund, and we are working obviously to assess the more needs and for recovery that we have. So many people are working around the clock and have been for days here at the State Operations Center. It is my pleasure to represent Volunteer Florida, and I will say we get calls for volunteers all the time. Please go to www.volunteerflorida.org. We have organizations that post volunteer opportunities, and trust me, we have people manned on the phones to take all types of calls for volunteers, because as you know, we want people to be put to use, and all our partners, the American Red Cross, Catholic Charities, all of those have volunteers in the hundreds, so we thank them for their service. And also, please remember to go to www.floridadisasterfund.org or text disaster to 20222. And I want to reiterate, we are not charging, none of our corporate, by Visa or by check, we are not charging a 3% administrative fee. So all this money will go directly to response and recovery efforts. And first of all, thank you so much, and thank you for everything you do. And it's a part to be, and specifically thank the Governor and the First Lady. And Mr. Guthrie, thank you so much for all the great work you do. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Jamie Grant. I'm the CIO for the state of Florida and lead the Florida Digital Service. Everybody said thank you. I think what I would maybe say is, because of this team, the governor's leadership, we have run what I believe to be the most rapid and robust digital response in the history of emergency response. And Kevin, I know a lot of people have said thank you to you, but every time I walk on this floor and tell you I need X to do the job you've asked me to do, or the governor has asked us to do, Your team's been there in spades, and it's the only reason we've been able to do what we've been able to do. Secretary Lende is actually down in theater. The Secretary of the Department of Management Services is a tremendous partner for us, but the Department of Management Services has been instrumental in making sure that we at the Digital Service have everything we need. We were activated at Impact. One of the first things we did was try and figure out how we could use digital tools, access data that was already in play, to figure out how we could support the mission of the people who are on the ground doing really, really important work and life-saving work. So we started with the shelter-in-place data. And we took that shelter-in-place data. We immediately stood up with our partners over at ServiceNow overnight, an instance where we could start ingesting that data, cleaning it up, and have kind of a structured database moving forward to support all of our efforts. One thing I want to stress as I read you some numbers is that data can answer the questions that data can answer, and if you're asking it the wrong question, and I think we saw that during COVID, right, where people asked questions, didn't understand maybe the answer that was being given, or more importantly, the answerer didn't understand what she or maybe he was saying, and it led the public to a lot of great confusion. So I'm going to try really hard to make sure that we ask the right questions. But the shelter-in-place data represented 20,660 households. So the way that that portal, that survey was set up, it was on a household basis, not a per person basis. There was the ability for free text to come in that would say the number of people, but it's important to make sure we keep the shelter-in-place data in the context of households. There were 20,660 unique household submissions after we were able to do the deduplication work. Within hours of receiving that data, we actually deployed AI contact center technology that we developed with some partners at MCI during the pandemic. We made 44,793 outreaches the day of the storm, both to landline, SMS, and digital capabilities in the field. We had more than 11,317 responses. 10,416 households reported safe. So I want to let that sink for a second. Day of storm, going out, using the data that Kevin's team was able to get from shelter in place before going to bed that morning, whatever time, we had 10,416 households that reported safe, which meant we could tell Mark and Kevin and all of these teams in the field, ESF 4 and 9 on search and rescue, that these are 10,416 households. We can put kind of in the queue for wellness checks and other needs down the road, but they're not your exigent circumstances. We had 901 households that reported needing rescue. We immediately began triaging that at the direction of Kevin through the emergency support function on the floor. We then stood up, as the governor announced a couple days ago, missing.fl.gov. That was an attempt to help people through other fashions get us contact information and information so that we could filter that into that same instance and be able to do that. On the manual review of that, we had 74 cases that were reported as to ESF 4 and 9, which are your most critical search and rescue. They then report those in the field. I'm just going to be candid. There's not a way in a situation like this to match record to record. You really have routing processes. What I can tell you is my team upstairs next door walks down to ESF 4-9 to make sure that all tickets have been cleared, they've been routed, and have been immediately responded to. The cooperation with CFO Petronas and his team in there have been fantastic. We then stood up safe.fl.gov. Safe.fl.gov is actually linked to, you'll see a disclaimer at the top of safe and missing. They point to that same back end that we're managing so that we clarify for people this is how to indicate that you or a loved one are missing, and this is how to report that you or a loved one are safe. And we are persistently around the clock cleaning up those records to then report into the emergency support function where we have those. So you can help us make sure that we more accurately and efficiently route resources. If somebody is safe and we can clear that ticket using digital means, that means that a body, a team, a person doesn't have to actually review and go out and respond and can get to the right place more quickly. The last thing we've been working on, and I know it's gotten a lot of a little bit of attention over the last couple of days, but we are deploying network access as traditional cell and internet carriers try and get things restored on the ground. We, as of 5 a.m. this morning, have 372 commercial high-priority Starlink units in theater being deployed as we speak. These units will start by supporting the CERT pods that Kevin talked about to set up mobile internet cafes where people can come in, maybe have access to chargers, send emails, send texts, and Wi-Fi call to let their friends or loved ones know that they are okay. They will support mobile command units. So Secretary Eagle and his team will be picking up 10 units when they arrive in theater tonight. Commissioner Glass and his team are deploying units throughout as well. And so those are really intended to be triage, network access. We have also been working, and the Starlink folks have been absolutely unbelievable. They do no longer have inventory in Cape Canaveral. There is more coming as we speak. So we will have a rolling inventory to meet demand and obviously be able to slow that down once traditional cell and network service comes back. For a couple of things, if you're looking for specs, each of those units can support up to 120 concurrent devices at one time. They have download speeds between 100 and 350 megabytes per second, and they have uploads of 10 to 40. And testing and training yesterday, people who had never seen the box were able to unbox to active service in 20 minutes. So I'd like to just again reiterate both a thank you to the governor, the first lady, and to Kevin, but also for everybody to understand that this emergency response is a team sport, that we couldn't do any of this without everybody standing here and some of the folks that are in theater. So we appreciate you. And I guess if I could close it out by just saying, if we can get people to take the step, it may not seem important, but to come to safe.fl.gov to let us know that they are okay, we can better support our teammates in the field. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Jamie. Two key critical state agencies that are out here. Jared Perdue, the Secretary for the Department of Transportation, he is actively working on bridge restoration and things of that nature, helping to oversee what's going on there, and obviously CFO Petronas. I will do the best that I can to answer any of those questions if they do come up from those two agencies, but I will most likely defer them to their communications director that is here on site. So with that, we will be willing to take any questions that you may have. Yes, sir.
I have a question that goes back to the issue of evacuations again, which lingers. Those decisions that were made by Lee County to evacuate, to issue evacuations on Tuesday morning, were those made by Lee County alone, or were you also involved with that decision making? And I'm wondering just generally, was there, because so many other counties further north had already ordered the evacuation, seeing the path of the storm, was there a lack of urgency at that point to move forward with evacuations in these low-lying areas of Fort Myers, Sanibel, and beyond?
So the question in general is, comes centered around Lee County and a perceived slowness of the evacuation order given. All evacuation orders, all, and again, I've heard that all means all, and that's all that all means. So all evacuation orders are handled at the local level. The local emergency management directors make those decisions based on the information that they synthesize at the time, and they make the best decisions based on the information they have at the time. I think that's one thing that everybody needs to understand when making decisions in a disaster. Emergency management directors do not have a crystal ball. Emergency management directors have a ton of scientific data and scientific storm surge models and so on, but they made the best decision they have. They made the best decision on the information they have at the time. I believe that Lee County and their administration, to include their emergency management director, fire chiefs, and sheriff, made the best decision they felt was right for their community at that time. And I will never second guess a local emergency manager on their decision to pull an evacuation order.
I'm sorry. The second, to piggyback on John's question, is there any regret? I think early on, I think the governor and you were saying, hey, in Irma, we had 6 million people evacuate. That's 2 million too many. Only evacuate when these zones. Obviously, the storm, we didn't know where the storm was going. Some people might not have evacuated. Do you feel like that reticent approach was a mistake in hindsight? Or?
So again, the question is centered around, we were telling people you don't need to evacuate unless you're told to evacuate. So again, evacuation orders are at the local level. What the message that we were trying to make sure that we got to individuals is, look, if you go to the websites of either the local county emergency management agency or the state emergency management agency, and you see that you're not in evacuation zone, you're not necessarily needed to evacuate. Get off the roads, stay off the roads, so the people that are in high hazard areas can get on the road and evacuate. That was the message. That's the context and the content behind that conversation. Yes, ma'am.
In terms of the current the recovery process, how many people across the state are in shelters right now, and what is the plan for the state to help them find temporary housing? Obviously, there's a lot of houses that were destroyed in the storm. Is there a plan by the state to give them vouchers, temporary housing, FEMA trailers, or what's going on there?
So the question in general centers around sheltering and how many are in shelters, what's the next phase look like, what's that housing mission look like. So right now I don't have the exact number of people in shelters, and as far as how many shelters we have, I will either have Amelia or Alicia get that information to you right after this. So let's talk about the next phase of this. Next phase is what we call short-term, if you will, sheltering. We were going from emergency sheltering to now this short-term phase, if you will, of we start to consolidate shelters. And when I say we, I'm talking about the emergency management community in general. So Lee County will start to consolidate down to as few shelters as they need so that they can get schools back open. That'll happen organically in each and every county. We may look at a regional strategy if the individuals in those counties get down to a number that we can go into a regional shelter. I'll give you, for example, I don't have an example in Southwest Florida, but let me give you one up in the Tampa Bay area. Pasco County has a 1,000, give or take, bed facility that is a state facility that we could use as a regional shelter in that Tampa Bay region. I know that we've talked about some things like that at Babcock Ranch and in still trying to build out some capability in the Southwest Florida area. I don't know that we're at that location, but we will work with our local community partners and try to get to a point where maybe we go to a regional sheltering strategy if we can handle that. So that's what's going to be the next phase is consolidation, get into that shorter term, try to get schools back open, come down to an area where we just have the necessary facilities and the necessary personnel to handle that. Then we're going to get into housing. When we get into housing, that is a joint FEMA, it is a primary, today, it's primarily a FEMA mission. Now, I will say, a good friend of mine, Louisiana EM Director Casey Tingle, has already offered up to donate 500 former FEMA trailers that they used in previous disasters to go ahead and get those over here to see if we can use them in any way, shape, form, or fashion we can. We are actively talking with Casey on how to get those trailers from point A to point B, right? So one of his vendor that he used for that happens to be one of my housing vendors. So we should be able to get that mission moving. We will stage those trailers somewhere. But the overall management of the FEMA trailer or FEMA housing, TSA transitional sheltering assistance or temporary sheltering assistance that goes on in hotels, that is the next phase that we're going to be in. We got to determine how many people we have in that bucket, and we'll start moving to that very quickly. One challenge that we're having right now especially in the Lee County area is hotels are still trying to get water back. So I did not talk about that, so I will talk about that for just a second. Yesterday, under the governor's direction, the Florida Division of Emergency Management reached out to Lee County and the associated municipalities there to see what we could do to assist with getting the water back on. We put out a RFQ to about a dozen companies, give or take, here in this building. We got all of the contract vendors we have that are in that space, and we asked them, here's the scope of her work, here's what we want to do. We did award it to a vendor yesterday that has an MIT engineer, and that same engineer worked on that water system in the past. So that's one of the primary reasons we selected that that firm to get that work done. I have given that firm the following benchmarks. To the individuals that can receive water, again, they don't have a catastrophic damage to their home. Their home's not on still on the slab. It's still habitable. To those that can receive water, 50% of Lee County I want restored in 72 hours. This was as of 10 o'clock yesterday morning. 50% restored in 72 hours. I want 75% of that the individuals that can receive water restored in 5 days, and I want 100% of those that can receive water returned by Sunday, which happens to be the same day that electrical individuals say that they will have most of the restoration done to homes that can receive that. So we've laid out a very good plan, very good strategy how to get that done. We've selected a vendor. That vendor is on site right now, turning wrenches, cutting pipe, getting stuff fixed.
Is that plan going to alleviate the, right now where I think we're trucking like 1,000 gallons of water, like 100 miles from like Lakeland, I think?
Yes, sir. So Eric, that is correct. This will quickly eliminate the fact that we're having to truck in hundreds of thousands of gallons of water about every 4 to 5 hours for a handful of hospitals and some other critical infrastructure. Right here.
As the death toll continues to rise, what's the numbers looking like from y'all's office?
So I'm going to let Commissioner Glass give the official count on that, Commissioner.
The official count right now of the medical examiners is 58. That was the last official count that we have. But they're working feverishly going through everything now. So, and you have to give them time because it takes time to go through things. But at the same time, they got to determine, was that death related to the storm or was it to other natural causes?
You mentioned femurs. Is that what you said? That y'all have activated that as
They
well?
have some femurs out and working in some of the with some of the medical examiners now. Yes, to help them with analysts and identifying.
On the search and rescue mission, I mean, is there an update as to, I know that there were 20,000 who were households that were reported in the survey as sheltered in place. Is there an information as to how many households have not been reported saved?
So I'm going to ask Jamie to come back up again because I think one of the things, emergency management in general was an industry that, you know, in the last 2 or 3 years was in desperate need of technology engagement. I think we've seen technology engagement in the Florida Division of Emergency Management as a leader nationwide. Even FEMA now is doing some artificial intelligence stuff on the individual assistance side, and I'll let them make their announcements on how they're going to do that. But they are too engaging technology at a rate that has never been engaged before. One of the problematic issues is there's so many platforms. So for instance, right now, the CFO uses a platform. We had a platform that we ended up saying, look, we're getting a lot of data. We need professional help by a group that does nothing but data. So I think there's a lot of different platforms out there, and Jamie is feverishly trying to work to connect all of those. Jamie?
Thanks. I want to make sure, will you restate the question so I give you the right answer? And maybe one thing that would help, when you look at the shelter-in-place survey that data first comes in, it's important to see kind of the difference between structured or unstructured data, free text, unstructured. That makes our life really hard. Structured makes our life at least a bit easier. In this situation, we can tell you that there were 24,485 submissions. There were 20,660 unique household records. So there were more than 4,025 duplicate entries by somebody into that survey. Now that survey allowed people to type all sorts of stuff. So when we ingest the 20,660 unique records, and they can free type 4+ or 4 and they're this age and all this other stuff that makes it really difficult. So there was no actual measurement. And candidly, right now, our focus is on chasing down the rest of the records before we clean up kind of bad data. So what we've started with is review everything that's structured so that we can get it to Mark and ESF4. If we have knowledge that we have something, we send it. We then have a team working nonstop upstairs to kind of clear. The other thing that I think is important to understand, we are still going into the field regularly with AI technology to contact to try and clean up. So as of this morning, your delta, so let me stop there. Get me back to your question to make sure I'm answering the right question, Anna.
Oh, sure. So I guess the most specific way, of those entries, how many of them have yet to be reported saved?
So if you did the math of 20,660 minus 10,416, that's against those records. It is candidly impossible for me to map that number to the records that came in from missing.fl.gov at this point. To Kevin's point, the reason we immediately worked around the clock to stand up a ServiceNow instance for the digital service is so that we can ingest data from every single platform. Doesn't mean it's automatic, but we've had a team, we do it a little differently. We've had a Zoom bridge running 24/7 for a week upstairs where devs, data, and design are happening on a nonstop basis to be able to get you to this. We're also still chasing to try and close that gap. as batteries are dead and wet and phones are down, it's impossible for me to even know in some situations that somebody received the text, but we are still getting responses in.
I think I just want to add to that, Anna, is, you know, one figure that Jamie doesn't have, but I know he knows, is just the urban search and rescue folks from CFO Patronus's office, the 17 urban search and rescues that are out there, rescue teams that are out there. They've had over 45,000 waypoints that they have put out there. So again, we are somewhat confident. Again, this team up here is somewhat confident. We are not downrange in the fight, right? But we are somewhat fairly confident that we have had people check every address, because again, we got 20,000 to Jamie's information. He has 20,000 with over 45,000 waypoints. So if you follow the math there, we've been to just about every address at least once, and now the CFO's office with his teams are going back and doing a second look at every single location. I'm not saying we're not going to find anybody else. I don't want to put that context out there. We may find other people, but here's the thing. We believe that we have searched everything very quickly. Now we're going back and doing that technical search by address. We'll take 2 more questions.
I wonder, out of the death toll that has been confirmed thus far, is there a pattern that the medical examiners are reporting? Are these all drowning deaths? And, you know, is there any general housing situation? Are these people that were in mobile homes? Any further extrapolation you can make from?
Well, from the second part, I'm not sure on that question. That would have to be getting down in the weeds on that one. But you have drowning, you have some that wasn't able to get medical services, maybe from a heart attack, and I believe if you get with our PIO, she sends something out with a little bit of a context to it, the different types. And if I can get you more on that one later, we can discuss. But it's going to be a myriad of different things. There's a lot of drowning, of course, but there's other avenues.
I have a question for Commissioner Diaz on. You had mentioned that nearly all school districts will be opening by the end of next week. Are there any school districts that you don't foresee opening in the near future? And can you talk a little bit about what your expectation is of how many students will be going back?
So, like I said, for 46 of the 59 in that bucket, we have the school districts that have probably the most to deal with are Lee, DeSoto, Charlotte, Sarasota, and Hardy counties. And some of the issues out of the schools control are, as I saw yesterday when I went down there with the governor, there's still flooding going on the Peace River in Arcadia with Split-Stack County. There's flooding in Northport and Sarasota, which is causing them to be split off, and they have to deal with the flooding. So as the process works, first of all, Director Guthrie talked about the shelters. They have to transition from the emergency shelters, which are a lot of them are schools. Once they've gotten out of that duty, they're doing the assessments of their buildings to see when they go, what repairs or how they are to go back in, and then power has to be restored, or in some cases water, in order to even be able to come back into these school buildings. So the rest of them that we talked about that haven't opened outside of those 5 really are mostly just waiting for power to be restored, and they're on a day by day. So we will see schools opening throughout the week and school districts throughout the week because power has been restored. They've already done their assessment, and we continue to do that. On some of the Southwest Florida areas that have more damage, we are day-to-day working with those superintendents, again, continuing to provide resources from other districts, whether it be personnel, assets, and the ability to look at that, and we'll whittle that down to the point where we figure out what assets they would need to completely open again. And those in the hardest hit areas are obviously going to take a little longer, but the goal is to get those students back to school, to return them to normalcy, because we know for the rest of the community to be able to deal with the issues that are remaining, it's very important to have the kids back into school.
So we're not going to take any more questions, but I want to, in wrapping up, I want to just make sure that I thank you for being here today, helping us get our message out. I want to thank all of the agency heads that are here. A handful of us will be leaving today and heading down to the Fort Myers area, where some of us will be staying there quite some time, and others will be returning. And I say on behalf of all of us, we all appreciate the governor's leadership, the First Lady's leadership in this area, and we can stand ready to continue to support the mission. Thank you very much.